Thank you. How many of you in the audience have ever thought about being a police officer? Anyone? Well, that's kind of what we get today when I go around. We don't get as many people say as we used to. But for me, I have thought about being a police officer my entire life. Matter of fact, here's a picture of me in 1966 standing next to my sister, and this is a picture of my dad. This is my best impression of Men in Black, me and my father right here. So you can see this is in 1966, and one of my most vivid memories, and he was a police officer, was a story that he told one morning as I was listening to him talk to my mom. And he began to tell the story about the night before what had occurred. And so he says to my mom, I got a call last night to a post where a man was shooting at a postman. Well, my dad arrived on the scene, and guess what happened? The guy started shooting at him. So this long barricaded situation unfolded, and as it did, my dad decided about midnight to make a move to the front of the house. Now imagine this, all these sheriff's deputies around. My dad decides to move, and he starts taking this deputy sheriff with him. So as he begins to move around the front of the house, he gets near the front door, starts to enter a barn area that was close there, looks up, and the deputy sheriff who was following him, he now sees the man standing on the front porch that had been shooting at him. He's got a rifle pointed right at the deputy sheriff. He immediately hollers, "Drop the gun!" And as soon as he did, he wheeled and fired one shot right towards my dad's head. It barely missed my dad by an inch. Matter of fact, it was so close that the bullet fragments went into his face and the wood chips also. He returned fire, fell backwards. The guy crawled back inside the house. My dad was credited with saving the deputy's life. Unfortunately, the man perished. I've been a police officer for over 30 years, and for 17 of those years, I've been a police chief. But the past 7 of them, I've had a front row seat, if you will, and watching American law enforcement and talking to police officers about law enforcement professionalism and also about leadership with an organization called FBI-LEEDA. It pains me greatly to see the current state of American policing of what's happening now in America. Police legitimacy is at an all-time low. Trust with our communities is at an all-time low. Officers being ambushed in retribution for acts. Unbelievable times. But I'm not here to deliver a message of despair. I'm here to deliver a message of hope. Over the past several years, everyone understands that the role of a police officer has changed greatly. With the failure of social services, with the increase in dealing with mental patients, with the increase in dealing with homeless, with the increase of terrorism, with the increase in many mass shootings and our school shootings, the role of police has changed greatly. But unfortunately, police haven't been as quick to change. We've changed some of our tactics. We've changed the way we do things. But one of the most important things we need to understand we need to change is our mindset. One of the things that a police officer is absolutely equipped with is what we call a warrior mindset. Now, why do we do that? It's because immediately as a police officer is brought into training, we begin to talk to them, we begin to train them for shootings, for tactical, technical scenarios. Now, that's needed, because the job of a police officer is absolutely dangerous, without question. But what we need to do is have that police officer not just have that mindset that's only 5 to 10% of their job, but to expand their mindset to be inclusive of connecting with others. Now, I know personally how that mindset, let's think for a second about the mindset of a warrior. And I know personally, because of being a police officer that number of years, I know how they think. What does a warrior say? A warrior is a person that is at war with something. Think about that for a moment. It's a person who has a siege mentality or a mentality to go out and enforce the laws. Matter of fact, if you were to ask police officers today, what is your main job? Overwhelmingly, the majority of them will say to enforce the law. But in reality, the job of a police officer is to protect the constitutional rights of all people. And you think about that mindset, how we front load them with those things. I understand that. Sometimes a warrior mindset can allow you to be an us and them mindset. That's the last thing that we need from our police. Personally, I've lived that mindset. I understand it. And particularly being a police chief for a number of years, I understand what it is to work with officers and see officers and to be with officers with that mindset. As a matter of fact, it took hold of me. I can remember heading home one day from a particularly rough day at the police chiefing business. As a matter of fact, I have a saying about police chiefing business is this, that as a police chief, you actually age in dog years. And so that is very true. It's not 1, it's actually 7 for 1. And that's very true. I found that to be true. And I remember this day I was heading home and I was going to stop by a Walmart. And so I had this warrior mindset all day, dealing with issues, dealing with problems. And I remember having to park in the Heart Healthy parking spot. Have any of you ever had to park there? Well, I parked there, and as I began to walk into Walmart, I noticed that there was a young man whipping into a parking spot, and he had a blacked out SUV, he had sunglasses on, his music was blaring, and he was in a big stretch car, and I said, I dare you, no placard, no handicap, pulled right into a handicap spot. My warrior mindset kicked in, and I thought, I dare you, especially since I've had to walk from the Heart Healthy spot. So I thought about what should I do? Well, immediately I began to think, well, let's write him a ticket. Well, I tell you, I'm the police chief. I'll just call someone to come out and have him arrested. Then I thought, you know what? You need to embrace the benefit of the doubt. Just go inside and shop in Walmart. Now, how many of you have ever shopped at Walmart? That's an experience. But shopping at Walmart angry is another experience. And the fact that I was inside Walmart angry made it worse. So my warrior mindset had kicked in. And about this time, I'm walking around the store trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm still thinking about this guy parking in this spot. And all of a sudden I see him. And I look and see him coming in the door. But now I see him differently. And why? Because now he's pushing a wheelchair. And inside that wheelchair is a child. And I thought for a moment, good gracious, my warrior mindset coming into Walmart would have forced me to do something. So now I looked at him as a guardian. And I said, I'm willing to do anything I can to help. It changed. Now, what is a guardian? Well, a guardian is a protector of the community. A guardian is a person that sees the cause of policing, not just the action of policing. A guardian is someone who looks out for the community, is a partner with the community, not separate from them. The old adage back in the 1990s when we were doing community policing was that the folks we worked with, the folks in our communities were our customers. Well, that's not really true. The folks in our communities are our partners. We must expand our mindset from that of a warrior to be inclusive of that also of a guardian, a person who understands connectivity, a person who understands the importance that people want to understand their police officers, but they also want to support them. So the officer needs to understand the guardian mindset. The second thing is 3 levels of service. Now, how many of you have ever had an encounter with a police officer? Raise your hand. Oh my goodness. Hope it was good. Most of them are traffic situations or traffic related, but one of the things that I think police officers ought to do is to understand that we must begin to repair our relationships. And how do you begin to pair relationships with the community is you create better relationships. And doing that, one of the things police need to do is deliver certain levels of service. But the first one that I've seen as a police chief, 3 levels of service delivered to folks. The first is what I call survival or basic. The second is called successful or satisfactory. And third being significant or exemplary. Well, I'll give you an example. Imagine for a moment if you were on the side of the road, stuck with no way to get out, you're in your car, your tire's flat, no way to call for help, traffic buzzing by, that's a pretty tough situation. Now, in today's world with all the cell phones, it's hard to imagine that you wouldn't have one, but let's just pretend your battery was dead and you couldn't call someone, so you're stuck. Well, all of a sudden, the police officer comes up. When that officer drives up, you sit and you think, oh, goodness, here's help. But he just simply rolls his window down and says, what's going on? And you say, my tire's flat. And then the officer says, well, have you got a way to call for help? And you say, no, my phone's messed up. And then he says, well, I'll call a tow truck for you. So immediately he calls a tow truck, but then he drives off. Well, see, that's basic. And what does that do? That doesn't endear connectivity. That doesn't endear empathy. That endears, I'm too busy to deal with you. Now, it is true that cops and police officers are way busy. We're doing other things, no question about it. But every encounter with the police officer matters. Us as police officers, we have to understand we cannot arrest our way out of every situation. We must serve people as well. The second, on the successful level, is that officer would ride by, roll the window down a little bit, talk to you about what was going on, make you feel like that you were important, possibly call a tow truck for you, just stay with you for a few moments, and then when something else, he would move on. Now, that's satisfactory. It's still not what we're looking for, but something that's important. Now, how about the exemplary level, the significant level? What about if that police officer actually got out of that car and walked up to you and said, how's it going? What's happening? And you said, my tire's flat. And he said, oh, my goodness. Or she said, oh, my goodness. Well, let's see if we can't get you some help. And then if it was hot, if they offered you to sit in the car, or if it was you needed anything that could help you. And what about even if that officer would help you change that tire, as this officer did right here? She couldn't resist a selfie on an officer changing a tire. I don't blame her. I would probably take one too. But the one thing that would matter here would be that if an officer significantly connects with you, you never forget it. It's just like a traffic citation. When I ask you how many of you have ever had a traffic citation, I'd be willing to bet that it wasn't so much that you violated the law that mattered. What did matter to you was how that officer made you feel. That was most important, because that's what matters to all of us. So the next one is, the third thing is accountability breeds here what we call responsibility. Well, this is important because I believe that what we should do as police officers is hold ourselves personally accountable. Personal accountability matters to police and it matters to our community. The first things we should do is have the highest moral and ethical standards, no question about it. The second thing is to have the guardian as well as the warrior mindset in conjunction, working together. We should hold ourselves to the highest standards of performance and service to our folks. We need to understand the importance of that. One of the things that we've often heard about in law enforcement circles is this thing called the thin blue line. And sometimes that has been pushed the wrong way, or the wrong things have been said about it, that it's this protection. And sometimes it's been used for that. Well, the thin blue line is important, but I would submit to you that we should adopt what TSA does when it comes to checking on folks at the airport. If you see something, you ought to say something. If we see police officers not doing what they should be doing, even though it would be our partners or be our trainees or be people above us, that we should say something. We should not tolerate bad conduct by police officers. The second portion of that is organizational accountability. And what I mean by that is organizations need to step our training up to include the guardian as well as the warrior mindset. Now think about it. We do 90 to 95% of our training deals with 5 to 10% of our job. No wonder our cops and our police officers look at the world the way they do. Our organization should not just transfer bad police officers around from one agency to another or from one division to another, that we should actually get rid of those officers. The other things we ought to do is have a better job of selecting police officers. Right now, police officers really, when we choose them, we really don't have a selection process. What we have is called an elimination process, which means that we only hire the people who's left and haven't been eliminated. And you think about the significance of that is that we need in the day's world is to recruit people into law enforcement that fit, who understand the cause, who understand the why. It is a difficult, complex, and there's not one magic bullet to fix law enforcement for certain. But if we take the look and if we join together with our communities, absolutely nothing we can't do together. Sir Robert Peel said in the 1890s, he said, the police are the people and the people are the police, which is so true. Back in 1966, there was a young kid that was watching a police officer and hearing a police officer every day he come home. And interestingly enough, my sister also became a police officer. But we watched my dad, and we watched him perform a service, and we watched him in the 60s, and it had a major impact on us of what we wanted to be. There's a whole generation of kids out there right now watching. They're watching us as police. They're watching us as community members. They're watching us as a society of what we do to handle these problems that we face now. You know, folks, we don't have all the answers, but together we can get all those answers. I ask you in a call to action to say that support your police, understand where their mindset is, but also understand that the police want to be servants to the community as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.